Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Playeasy Warmup Podcast. I am your host, co-founder, and president of Playeasy, Kerri Shields, and today I am super excited for this episode. We have a very special guest, my mom, Renie Shields. But before we get into the interview, it is Super Bowl week. I was just joking with my producers, Sarah and Brenna, that I was not going to wear a hat today, but I have worn an Eagles hat the last two episodes, so I was a little nervous. My superstitious self came out, and go Birds this weekend. But so today, when this episode comes out, is National Girls and Women's in Sports Day, and it's a day that for the last few years has really made me reflect on my time playing sports and how I got into my professional career today. And when I think of who has inspired and influenced me most in my professional career, but in my life, it is my mom. She has been in sports my whole life as a coach, as a mentor, and someone who I've just aspired to be like my whole life. It also makes me reflect on all of the women that I have come into contact with over the course of the last 7 years in building this company. I started Playeasy, co-founded it with a few guys. And so I was not around a lot of girls in building this company. And over the last few years, I've been able to build some incredible relationships with women in the sporting event and tourism industry that I am just so grateful for. Their mentorship, their friendship. And I have many women who not only are partners or customers or clients of ours, but women who I really consider friends now that I just am very grateful for. And so I wanted to just take time to thank and acknowledge those women who have impacted my professional career. I also wanted to give a shout out. I work with three incredible women, Sarah Capuzzi, Brenna Collins, and Alexa Pivnik, who I've seen them through the start of their professional career, and to see their growth and really just the confidence that they've built over the course of the last few years in their roles. Being in a startup is extremely difficult. You're doing 100 different jobs at once. There's a lot expected out of you, and a lot of times you don't know what's really coming next. It's not easy, and all three of them have really stepped up, and it's been one of my greatest gifts as a professional to see their growth. And so they're also, Sarah and Brenna are my producers, so they're listening to me as I do this episode, but I just wanted to shout out to them and really just thank them for being a part of this journey. I'm very grateful. And so to get into today's episode, I know I said my mom was going to be our guest today. And so to give a little bit of background on her, she is currently the Senior Associate Athletic Director for Student Experience at St. Joseph's University. For those of you who might not know, it is a Division I athletic program in Philadelphia area, and has been the Director of Compliance Services for over 20 years. She was a former standout for the Hawks in basketball, cross country, track, and softball. She played 4 sports in college, which is pretty unbelievable to even say out loud. She was a 3-time All Big Five selection in basketball. She was inducted into the Big Five Hall of Fame and into the St. Joe's Athletics Hall of Fame. She was also the top runner on the women's cross country team and was the starting center fielder in softball as a senior. Growing up, when I was born, she was a coach. She coached at St. Joe's when I was very young. Famously, she was on the same coaching staff as Gino Ariema, Jim Foster, and Muffet McGraw and her. There's a great photo of my brother. I think he was 2 years old at the time, at one of their coaching getaways. But so she was a coach at St. Joe's. She also coached at Villanova for a time. She was an assistant coach with Harry Peretta, as well as Shelley Pennyfather, and so had an unbelievable coaching career at the collegiate level. When she became a mom, she had 4 kids, still worked full-time my whole life, and decided to get more into the administrative side of things in college athletics. With all of the time that she does not have, she is somehow still continues to coach at the high school level. She coached me and my 2 sisters all growing up, our grade school teams, our high school team, and also our travel teams, and something that she's really passionate about. And I just feel really grateful to, I say this in this interview, but I feel like I hit the parent jackpot in a way. My parents are unbelievable, and my mom has always been my biggest inspiration, as she is to many other women and student athletes that she has coached and mentored over the course of her career. And so in preparation for this episode, I thought I would write down a few lessons that she has taught me, or that I've gained from her through her professional career. I could have a whole nother episode on what she's taught me as a mom, as a partner, as a friend, but just professionally, what I've taken into my professional career. And so I say this in the episode, so I'm sorry for repeating myself, but my childhood, I grew up at St. Joe's University, and so my 3 siblings and I would go to work with her and, spend the day just running around the courts and the tennis courts and just, having our daycare essentially at her work, which was what a cool way to grow up. But I distinctly remember going into campus every morning and her always saying hello to every single person that we saw. It was the person, at the front that worked the parking lot, to the person at the front desk, to the trainers and all of the student athletes. And just seeing, she treated everyone the same. And that has stuck with me my whole life. She always says, treat the people in the equipment room the same as you treat your head coach or an opposing coach or whoever it is. That really the importance of building a relationships and just being a genuinely good human and treating people how you want to be treated. Another lesson is that walk into every room like you belong. The confidence that she exudes in my earliest memories, I never saw anything other than thinking that I belonged. And this was in a predominantly male industry that she's been in her whole life. And that confidence comes from the hard work and preparation it took you to get into that room. And so she's the hardest working person I know, and a lot of my work ethic comes from her. I'm nowhere near on her level, but she so much goes into what people don't see, and I got to see kind of what it took to get into those rooms. And so that's something that I've really taken into my career, is 1, just having that confidence, but 2, putting in the hard work and preparation into getting into the position to be successful. Another one is that no matter how crazy work gets, she, like I said, this is a full-time job. She's worked full-time my whole life. She's coached, volunteered. She's at every SAC meeting and student athlete group and initiative that you could be at. But she's always there for her loved ones. I say this in the episode, I get a little emotional talking about it, but I played basketball at Boston College, and Boston is about a 6-hour drive, about an hour plane ride. And there was not one game in my college career that my parents did not show up for. At least one of them was at every game. And she is the same with all of my siblings and her now three grandchildren. So no matter how busy she is, she still makes time and shows up for the people she loves. And that's something that I've taken with me. Starting a company has, it could take over your life sometimes, but to really keep things into perspective is really important. And last, and like I said, I could talk about this for hours, but just leading by example. She walks the walk. She doesn't talk the talk. She's pretty shy and quiet if you don't know her, but she is the best leader I know. And that is, I say these lessons, she's never told me any of this. It's just how I see her work, how I see her treat others, how I see her interact with all different kinds of humans. It's something I take in my leadership role, and just, you don't have to be the loudest in the room, but you better work the hardest and, not just talk, just lead by example. And so it was cool to just take time to reflect. My mom and I don't get a whole lot of time to talk on a deeper level about these things and kind of what got us to the position that we are today. And so it was so fun getting to hear kind of her perspective, being a woman in sports, why she continues to do what she does, and really what gets her out of bed in the morning. And if you know me, you know how much love and respect I have for my mom. You know how close we are. And so it was such a pleasure having her. And I hope that you guys enjoy this episode as much as I did. This episode of the Playeasy Warmup Podcast is proudly sponsored by Sports Richmond, Virginia, where history meets adventure and sports thrive. Richmond isn't just a destination, it's an experience waiting to be discovered. The Richmond region, also known as RVA by the locals, blends hip with history and character with culture in a one-of-a-kind destination. Our region offers something for everyone, regardless of budget, interest, or age. Take advantage of all there is to see and do, and discover for yourself why the Richmond region was named #1 town to visit by CNN. If you're looking to take your next sports event or visit to the next level, make Richmond your destination. Learn more about what Richmond has to offer at sportsrichmondva.com. Thank you, Sports Richmond, Virginia, for supporting this episode and helping us share the stories that make sports and travel so impactful. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Playeasy Warmup Podcast. Today, I'm very excited to have a special guest, my mom, Renie Shields. Mom, thanks for being here.
Not a problem. Glad to join.
Yeah. Thanks. So to start off this conversation, could you give a little bit of your background and how you got into sports?
Sure. So my current position as a senior associate athletic director at St. Joseph's entails like pretty much everything I've worked toward over my many 30 years in college athletics. But I currently work in compliance, I do student athlete development, and also oversee 5 sport teams. So how I got started was just as a coach, basically teaching young ladies how to play the game of basketball. That evolved into a position in the compliance area. The compliance area in NCAA was a new position back in the early 90s. And given my personal situation, having to be part-time, it worked out really well where I could do most of the work at home. It was mostly record keeping of student athletes, squad list, financial aid. That eventually rolled into a full-time position at St. Joseph's in the compliance area. And then lastly, moving in as a senior woman administrator in 2010, where I oversee most of the sport teams. And then we currently have a new athletic director here for 7 years. And when she arrived, I then was assigned student athlete development, which we work with our students off the court and their development. And then I also oversee 5 sport teams, where I look at it as like a general manager. And basically, I feel like I have a good perspective on that because, number one, I was a coach. I was a parent who had a student athlete playing. So, again, all my experiences kind of lead me where I was today.
Awesome. And could you go even back before then? I know I tell people you played 4 sports in college, which seems crazy in today's world, but could you go back even further, growing up, just being involved in sports? Was it always a part of your life? And how did you end up playing those sports in college?
Sure. So basically growing up in the city, I think every young child in the city played, again, and back, talk about gender-defined roles, you were either playing with dolls or you were playing sports. And I chose the sport route. At that time, they were known as a tomboy and did not go the doll route. I went the sport route. So for me, playing games outside was something I've always done, whether it be wiffle ball, it'd be handball, be dodgeball, football, and then eventually basketball I started taking up pretty seriously in young grade school. So I really had a good skill set in each sport that I carried into high school. And then in high school I played basketball and softball, mainly because they're pretty much the only 2 sports that really existed back then. They did have track, but it conflicted with softball, so I clearly stayed with the basketball in the fall and winter and softball in the spring. when I got to college, I had the opportunity to earn a scholarship and went to St. Joseph's on a basketball scholarship. At that time, they also started up a club softball team, which eventually went into a varsity sport team. So I played softball for 4 years at St. Joe's. And eventually, in my junior year, club cross country and track started. So I took part in that as well. How I managed those three was you had to be in shape for basketball, so running was natural for me. So cross country track was a gift that I was able to kind of parlay into that sport. And softball, based on my background growing up in the city and always catching and throwing, it seemed to be natural as well. So basically, college life was basically about managing my three sports and my academics and not much social life, unfortunately, but it all worked out. My social life was my sports.
Love it. And some of my earliest memories are growing up around St. Joe's campus and being around while you were working, but also playing lunchtime ball with the guys. And I know that that was something you've done, since you were a kid, just playing with the boys. How did you find the confidence to play in a way that, there weren't a lot of girls playing in those sports?
So I guess when you're younger, you basically get berated by the boys all the time because I was the only girl playing with the boys. And I was always the last picked. And I think that my inner drive kind of told me that I'm going to do better. I'm going to show them what I can do. So I gained this inner confidence, and I would never step away from a challenge. So whether it be a young boy or an older teen, if they wanted to play a sport, I was all in. So I think my ability to continually play and get those gifts enhanced through sport gave me the confidence I needed in every aspect of my life.
Love it. And that's something you definitely instilled in your three girls as well. And so I obviously was very lucky to have you growing up as a mentor and a role model. Who were some women in sports that you looked up to growing up?
That's a great question. And I reflected on that pretty heavily because, I didn't have many mentors because there were very few women playing sports. My first recollection of a woman playing sports was Teresa Grant, who was a former player at Immaculata in and around the mid-'70s, and she played on a team that went to at that time, the national championship. And most of the young ladies on that team at the time were all local products. They played in Delaware County, went to Immaculata, and that's what they did. So to me, they were my mentors. I looked up to them. What were they doing? How did they do it? And what they did was they played a game that I loved, and they played on the playgrounds that I could play on. At that time, I was driving. I was able to commute and drive out to Upper Darby and get in pickup games. So I think those informally were my mentors. They were people I looked up to. And then later in life, because I didn't have many mentors, there were not many women in leadership positions in college athletics, I really relied on my former boss, Don DeJulia, to basically mentor me. And I was fortunate because he had many daughters and he did not see gender as any obstacle. So he was always encouraging me to take on another role.
And Don has since been very influential, I think, in all of our family's life, and I feel very appreciative for that. And so you talked about some of the obstacles. What were some challenges that you faced as you were getting into your career in athletics?
I think the first obstacle is there weren't many sporting opportunities for girls. I mean, the only sport we had in grade school was basketball. And I remember 8th grade specifically being in a class with boys and saying they were going out for the baseball team. And I'm like, hey, God, let them do that. And like, you can't do that. And I'm like, well, why can't I? And they're like, well, you're a girl. So, of course, the challenge was there, and I took the challenge on. I made the team. And again, where does the confidence come from? I was very shy and introverted. But again, the inner drive was in me. I went to every practice, went to every game, and was a base runner. I could run really fast. I was the base runner. I hardly played. But I think I learned most that year playing with the boys with a coach who really taught the game of baseball. So that, to me, was the first opportunity I had to go beyond just basketball. So then the number of sport opportunities started to increase, and then softball, volleyball started to pop up for girls' sports. So the first challenge was having a sport for the women. And then the next challenge was resources. The availability of gym space and or track space or fields were limited to men. So that was a big challenge. And gradually when I got to college, the next challenge was, well, the women will go after the men. So again, looking at women as being quite different and less superior or whatever word you want to use, they were less than the men. Therefore, the men always got more. And then lastly, again, leadership positions within college athletics hasn't really been available to women until the last 10, 15 years.
Yeah. And how have you seen opportunities for women change over the years since that time?
Tremendously. You can just turn on, again, I watched the game on Sunday. Iowa plays USC, and Caitlin Clark's jersey's retired. There's a full arena of people, and she's standing there. She's $1 million athlete. Like, that doesn't happen 10 years ago, even 5 years ago. So I think that to me is like, wow, women have really come forward in the sports that they should be coming forward in. And we think about Megan Rapinoe, who fought for salaries for the U.S. women's soccer team, and how they pushed against the union to say, hey, we do just as much as the men. Why are we not getting the same salary level? So that to me is a milestone as well.
Yeah, and I think that is definitely something we talk a lot about in our house. I had the opportunity to go to the women's Final Four this year, and just it was amazing to see how many people were there, how many people were celebrating women's sports. And my earliest memory of going to the Final Four was when you were part of the local organizing committee when UConn won. I believe it was early 2000s. Could you talk a little bit about that experience? Because it's something we talk a lot about within our industry.
Sure. So that was a year and a half in the making. So basically, when a city hosts a Final Four, it's a lot of partnerships come together. I was part of the women's Philadelphia women's basketball group that basically worked with all the events that went around the game. And there was also a group that also worked within the game. Obviously, when you run an NCAA championship, I always liken it to the NCAA comes in and uses your vehicle for a weekend. So you do all the maintenance on the vehicle, but they come in and they're driving it for the weekend. So we had to prepare everything for the event. It was amazing what goes on other than the game. So my specific role was to run 6 youth camps in and around the city. So at 6 different sites in and around the city, we had over 200 young women at a camp on the day of a game. To think about the magnitude of that is just really, I'm like, how did we do it? How did I do it? But it worked really well. And you start to see the excitement from women's basketball at the time. The other thing that went on is all the social events that go into the week of Final Four. Restaurants, hotels, you're working with the planning bureau down in Philadelphia, the Philadelphia Sports Congress, to make sure that they have everyone in the business district prepared for these teams that are coming in. And you're given 1 week's notice. So at that time, Tennessee, Connecticut, I'm drawing a blank on the other, Penn State, and I'm drawing a blank on the 4th team. We were so fortunate that 3 of the 4 teams were local products. Penn State, you have Renie Portland, who's from the Philadelphia area, had 2 players from the Philadelphia area. Tennessee, who at that time had a Philadelphia product, and Kristen Clement, and then UConn, Gino Auriemma being a Philadelphia product. So to us, we felt like we hit home run. Like, we're going to sell this event out. And we did. It was really amazing to see the number of people that came to that event and the activity that went in and around it. It was awesome.
Yeah, I think I was 10 years old at that point, and I still vividly remember just some of those icons. But just the importance of exposure for me as a young girl, being able to see what is possible. And now, 20 years later, seeing Iowa in the Final Four this past year, and just seeing how many girls are looking up to what could be, which I think was really cool. And so to get a little bit more into the work that you do today, this year was the first year that a St. Joseph's University athletics team made it to the national championship game, the field hockey team that you oversee, and you are responsible for bringing in the Elite 8 games to St. Joe's. Could you talk a little bit about what went into that process and how you made that happen?
Well, I would say it was a process, and it happened swift, and I couldn't tell you how swift it happened. So each institution who's in what we call the hunt to be one of the top, let's say, 12 teams in the NCAA rankings has an opportunity to submit a bid to the NCAA to host that first and second round games, which is, again, St. Joe's, we're never going to do it. And I kept telling my boss, Joe, I think we should do it. I just think we should do it. We had a new turf replaced in the summer of last year. We have a great venue. I think our backdrop is really neat. The challenge that we have as a university is our field only can hold about 700 people, and that'll be standing room as well. But with that being said, I'm like, we have to put a bid in. Our team's doing really well. They deserve an opportunity to host these first and second round games. So we put the bid in, and you get nothing back from the NCAA. So now you're waiting for Selection Sunday to happen for field hockey, and it doesn't happen until 10 o'clock at night, which, again, talk about, gender equality. 10 o'clock on a Sunday night, like, that should not happen. And that's been told to the NCAA committee many times. Anyway, so we're in a locker room at 10 o'clock at night, and St. Joe's comes up as not only being a top seed, but then hosting. So I'm like, literally like, holy gosh, what's the next step? So we had spoken to the people in our facility management staff, the people on campus who would have to be our partners in this weekend. And, honestly, you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know who your teams are. So we had prepared the hotels. We had prepared the Aramark food services, because with the concessions and having food available for the team should they want it. We had to talk to the city to be sure that, they would have transportation if needed. Fortunately, everything was in place. It just, everything has happened so quickly. So it was a lot of work Sunday night into Monday, and Monday's just a lot of meetings. The best part of it was, though, our team was so happy to be hosting, and our venue was so awesome to host an event, because field hockey in general, probably at a good game, you might get 800 to 1,000 people. And at St. Joe's, we knew we couldn't accommodate maybe 700 to 800 at the most or something, and oh gosh. So to accommodate more seating, we brought in a couple of sets of bleachers for the weekend. And then you have to sell tickets. So then you're talking to teams you just found out are going to be in your region for your games, and you're communicating with them to get their team settled. When are they arriving? When are they going to practice? And then getting the logistics, the timeline for each of their games. So it was a process, but it was a lot of planning that goes on before that. That week itself, again, you don't get a second to breathe. I'm working with the staff really closely. And I keep thinking of all the work we did. It was exhausting, but at the end of the day, and you all know this from we're working with event operators, it's like so worth the time. We ended up winning the event. The crowd was tremendous. The revenue was really good. So for us, it was a win-win. But there's not, and again, we get in college athletics for one reason. We love working with young student athletes, and to be able to do that for them that weekend was just, I would never not do it again. It's just the best thing ever.
And I was lucky enough to be there. It was definitely a proud daughter moment, but I thought it was unbelievable just to see how many people you got to see the campus as well. You guys have done so many renovations over the course of the last 5 to 10 years, and it looked beautiful. It was showcased in the best light, and to have you guys win was just a really cool end to the weekend. And I think with my job, I get to see kind of the ins and outs of what goes into actually planning those events, and being your daughter and being home that week, I got to see a lot of kind of the not so glorious side of things, whether that be picking up food for refs or figuring out laundry and all of the logistics around that people don't really see. I think my question is, how important are partnerships and relationships in hosting and running an event like that?
It's everything. And if you don't have the people, if you don't develop those relationships early, to do things at last minute will never get done. So the partnerships we've developed either through our marketing partner, which is Van Wagner, working with them to get the hotels, working with them to assist in the ticketing, working with the Philadelphia groups. It doesn't happen unless you've had those relationships. And to me, part of my job is to get out and meet people, whether it be parents, whether it be friends of St. Joseph's, or just attending events and just getting to know people and what they do. I think that, to me, is what makes our job easier in the long run.
Awesome. And that was definitely a career highlight for you. Could you talk about some other career highlights that maybe have stood out from the rest?
Well, obviously field hockey. I mean, who thinks of St. Joseph's teams, a campus of 4,800 students, would ever get to a Final Four, and it did. So that, to me, is one of our highlights. When the men went to the Final Eight in 2003, 2004, another highlight. That year was a magical year. They went undefeated. The venue was always crowded. To get a ticket, you had to wait. You may not get in. The excitement that went around that team was just phenomenal. And it's long lasting. It's still, to this day, people talk about that 2003, 2004 team. they're still celebrities within the St. Joseph's community. So when you talk about highlights, winning helps a lot in college athletics. But again, it's not why we as administrators get into the business. We get into the administrative side of things to do a job, number one, but mostly because we love working with young people who want to get better at what they do, whether it be on the court or off the court. But winning certainly helps all of that. You never forget some of those winning moments. We had two lacrosse teams both make it to the NCAA tournament 3 years ago. That to me is a highlight. So they're the things that we most remember.
And I'll just comment on that year when St. Joe's made it. I think they had a perfect season. I was in grade school, and my teachers let us watch the game during the NCAA games during school, and it still is one of the highlights of my childhood, just being a part of that excitement for a school that, our family loves so much. And so you talk about, a lot about winning, but more of the reasons why you do the job that you do. And there's so much more that goes into your job that people can see. And so can you talk a little bit about, what really motivates you and brings you to do your job to the best of your ability day in and day out?
Well, I talk to all the student athletes at the beginning of the year. As a compliance person, we have to lay out the rules that the student athletes have to follow. And they look at me as like the police, but I am not the police. Fortunately, I do student athlete development where I work with them to better themselves as individuals, whether it be career, whether it be more aware of DEI, understanding that people are not all just like them. There are people that are diverse within the world. How do we get along? We also work with, mental wellness. How can we help you mentally perform? How can we help you mentally off the court, off the field? What can we do to help you be the best you can be? So to me, that is why I do what I do. But at the end of the day, I like to tell student athletes, we're here to make sure you graduate within a 4 to 5 year time frame and have a great experience while you're here.
And I think that became very relevant. I was living at home at the time during the COVID time when you were doing a lot of work from home, and I got to see firsthand just the importance of that mentorship and the relationship that you have with your student athletes. And it's not just about the time on the field and on the court, but really building those life skills that we'll need when the game ends. And so could you talk a bit on the life lessons that sports have taught you that you carry with yourself today?
I think the most important one is resiliency, the ability to get knocked down and get picked back up again. I think that, to me, is such a great attribute that I would hope all student athletes would learn to build within themselves. That you're going to get knocked down, but you have to get up and also know that it's a journey. It doesn't happen overnight. It's a journey, and enjoy the journey, because at the end of the day, the destination is not what it was you thought, but the journey and getting there, being with your teammates every day in the locker room where you all share a love of a sport and you share a love for one another. That doesn't happen. That's what you do within a team. And to me, that camaraderie and that bonding within a team carries with you throughout life. When you get to a workforce, you're going to go in and you go through a weekend and you go in Monday morning and somebody looks at you and doesn't say anything. Whereas if you're on a team, you have a weekend, you go in the locker room and everybody's like, what did you do the weekend? What did you do? So again, when you talk about resiliency, it's like, okay, how can I bring that team culture into my workforce? And I think having athletes in the workforce really brings on that good culture, that healthy culture of like, hey, let's do something. Hey, what did you do this weekend? Hey, how can I help you today? I think that to me is a great attribute that athletes have. And it also, that connectivity is huge. And again, it's a life skill I hope that all athletes walk away with. And
you not only are in your position at St. Joe's, but are also a coach on the side. You coach our high school basketball team, Archbishop Carroll, and you also coach our travel basketball team. You don't have a lot of free time, and you spend that time really giving back and coaching young girls. Why has that been so important to you?
I think we talked about it. Mentorship. Who were your mentors? I really didn't have any. I didn't have anyone to look up to. I think it's important for young girls to see women in the sport doing it. Sometimes we see too many men, and I look around and I see too many men yelling at women or young girls. I'm like, that's not how you're supposed to do it. As coaches, not only are we teaching the skill set, but we're teaching life lessons, and how we speak to this young girl is really going to be important to their development. So if I build them up and their confidence, say, hey, look, you didn't do it this time, but let's try it this time, this way, their confidence is going to start to build. And then they build up that resiliency where, okay, I messed up this time, I'm going to come back and do it better next time. So really, why do I do it? I want to bring out the best of everybody, or what it is they do, and do it well.
Love it. And you do a very good job of that, I can say, as your daughter. So what advice would you give to young girls aspiring to build a career in sports, whether as an athlete or in leadership roles?
And you probably notice, because I say it all the time, get to know people. You walk into a room, don't put your head down and walk straight ahead. Don't be on your phone. Start building those relationships. Just a little, hey, my name is, who are you? Get to know people, network, build relationships. I think that's so important. And again, me being old and you all being younger, the phone is a great tool, but it can also be a terrible weapon. Sometimes we put too much time into the phone. We don't really look what's going on around us. But I think what I would recommend to young girls is when you get out in the world, start to introduce yourselves to different ideas, different people, and broaden your horizon. And it's all done through networking. And again, it's not because I want something out of it. It's because, hey, maybe down the road, they might see me and I might need something and I can connect with them because I built this relationship with them. But really get to know people and get to know what people do. And if you're in a certain industry, learn every aspect of the industry.
I think that's definitely one of the biggest life lessons you've taught me that I've taken, through my years playing and now into my career. Not only do I remember you playing with the guys pickup, during work basketball, but from the moment we went into campus at St. Joe's, you said hello to the parking attendant, to the person working the front desk, to the person working in the gym, and always made us say hello, and the importance of building that relationship, no matter if, they could get you somewhere or not. I think you really lead by example, and that's something I've taken with me, and I credit a lot of my successes as a professional to that. So thank you, and I just wanted to comment on that. So what excites you most about the future of women's sports?
I think the Caitlin Clark effect is one thing that excites me so much. To think that one young lady could transform a sport the way she did in 1 year, to me, is just amazing. And I see more of that coming down the road. I think that's just the start of it. I don't believe the general audience had any idea how well women could do things. There was always this roadblock of like, well, that's the woman. No. That's a human being who's capable of doing a lot more than you think she can do. And I think Caitlin has shown that she's not very big. She's been gifted with a lot of gifts, but she's also sharing her gifts with a lot of people. And her demeanor is very, very good. She gets out, she gets to know people. She does a lot of charitable work. But I see that as a start. And you can see now that even in Philadelphia, there's a bid to bring in a WNBA franchise, which we never would have imagined 5 years ago. But now you're seeing owners who have billions of dollars saying, hey, you know what? That's a good business investment. That, to me, is exciting.
Yeah, we were actually talking about this at a family party last weekend, but my first WNBA game was going to see the New York Liberty with my Rebecca Lobo jersey on, but it was the closest place to see a WNBA game. And so the excitement around, being able to have the Philadelphia area girls growing up, being able to see them on that big of a stage is super exciting, for us and just as women in sports. And so how can we continue to empower the next generation of female athletes and leaders?
I think getting out, telling our story, and making people understand it's possible. One of the other positive things you see in your industry is the number of girls involved in sports at a young age and want to continue in the sport. They may not be the best skilled in that particular sport, but they're starting to build relationships at a young age. They're starting to do things they didn't think they would do. And to see a lot of these sporting venues packed with girls every night or every weekend, to me, that's all positive. That did not happen before. And every weekend, you can go to any place, any sporting venue, and you'll see as many girls as you will see boys. And again, that took a long time happening. So, again, I see the future just building and building based on the youth that are now playing the games.
And something I didn't mention about things you do in your free time that you don't really have is you've been a part of the women's committee for the NCAA in voting for Woman of the Year. Why is that important to you? What are some takeaways that you've had over the course of the past few years in doing that? And just so to give context, we both of us love the beach. It's our happy place, and you've spent hours upon hours of reading resumes and women applying for this significant honor. And so, yeah, just wanted to ask you about that.
Yeah, so I spent 4 years on the Committee on Women's Athletics, which is a tremendous group of women and men who really want to push forward women sports and also want to promote women in various ways. And one of the honors that the committee has is to select a Woman of the Year. There's a small subset of that committee, which I chair for 2 years, and basically each institution has an opportunity to submit a female who's done significant work on the field, in the classroom, and in the community. And it grew from my first year I think I read over maybe 100, and by the second year it was over 200. The amazing work that women do while still playing sport and still going to school, to me, was unbelievable. I mean, we had females who were working in the hospitals, in critical care units, and actually making decisions. That to me is like, oh my gosh. And then the next day they're going to go on the playing field and compete against their opponent. This is amazing. And the couple of years I had chaired it, the 2 years, getting down to that one or two women was so hard. And you just want to wrap your hands around probably 40 of them that were just stellar. They were just amazing.
That's amazing. And I think something that we didn't really talk about, but you just mentioned that there were men included in this decision. And so I think I've hit the lottery with parents in my lifetime, just having you and Dad, and how much of a critical role he's been in my life, and just supporting me and making sure that all of his girls knew we could do and be whoever we wanted to be as long as you put in the work. Could you talk a little bit about just the importance of the support of men in your journey?
Absolutely. Again, having a parent and parents who really support what you do. And one thing I would say, it's support your child given their ability. Don't over pressurize them into doing something they don't want to do. If they want to, so for example, we have a daughter that likes theater. Like, she still plays sports, but she still had an eye on theater, and she now does theater work. To me, that's tremendous. Whatever your child wants to do, support them in the best way you can. If you can support them financially, great. If you cannot, just be there for them. To me, what I don't like to use the word hate, but what bothers me the most sometimes about parents, if their child is not an active participant in competition, they won't show up because they're not playing. That's when your child needs you the most. So whether their child's the best dancer or maybe not the best dancer, but they're still part of that group, show up for them. They need you at the most when they're not at what we would say competing in that event. They just want to know that what you support, what they do, how hard they work, and what got them to be where they are today.
Yeah, I'm going to get emotional, but I think that's one of the best things that you guys have done for me as a parent. I went through 2 losing seasons in college, and those were not fun times at all. Oh gosh, didn't expect to get emotional, but having you both there, one of you were at every single one of my games. It meant the world to me. And when people ask, how did your parents raise good kids? It's that they always showed up, no matter what. And I'm just really grateful for that. And I think something else, I tell this story, being, my job, we're exposed to a ton of different sports and activities that I didn't even know existed, whether that be, chess competitions to robotics. And I remember distinctly I have an older brother who wasn't as into sports as we were. He was a track and field runner, but you dropping him off at robotics camp and us at basketball camp, but you just wanted us to be involved. Really try something. And I just think that is such an important lesson that I was exposed to really early in life that I'm just very grateful for. And so as we're celebrating National Girls and Women in Sports Day, why do you think it is so important? And how can people become more involved in supporting women in sports?
I think one thing that the community does really well, and I look at the community around St. Joseph's, is there's a lot of young children that don't have the financial means to participate in a lot of the sporting activities. But yet their teachers and their community leaders will bring them to a field hockey game. They'll bring them to a basketball game. We'll have Women in Sports Day here. Philadelphia School District will come in. Just having young girls see what goes on a college campus is huge. Aspire to be what those current students are. For me, young girls are more impressionable when they see it happening. And I think about my time as a young girl going to watch a high school game and thinking, oh, I can play high school basketball. But because I had those people I could look up to. Same I would say for young girls. Get out, and if you're a parent, expose your child to many different activities that the woman can do. And something's going to stick. And then when it does stick, make sure to have the parents there supporting.
Awesome. And just to close us out here, a question I don't think I prepared you for, but what has been one of the favorite games or moments in sports that you've been a part of? You can give more than one answer if you'd like.
Oh, that's interesting. Again, as a coach, I guess I look at a couple of the teams that I didn't think were good enough to win a game. So I think of your senior year, we played a very good Cardinal O'Hara team. And we end up winning that game. It was a game we might notice. I'm thinking, there's no way we're beating O'Hara today. So those times when you bring out the best of your team, to me, that is a highlight. We had a team 6 years ago that I didn't think was good enough to win. And they bring their best selves in that moment. To me, that's why, it's fun coaching. They're my couple highlights. Personally, I think running a marathon and finishing it was a highlight for me. It's not a team sport. It was more I'm old, and can I really run 26 miles? And it's like you have this doubt in the back of your head. But again, I challenged myself. I put a time in my head of what I wanted to run, and I was able to do it. And I'm like, okay, I'm good. I'm really good now. And again, I wish it was a team sport, but it wasn't. It was more of an individual accomplishment. But at that point in my life, I thought it was something I could pat myself on the back for. And that, to me, was a good accomplishment.
Awesome. And I will co-sign my favorite sports memory, that team that you talked about. My senior year, my two younger sisters were also on the team. So you coached your three daughters. That led to a state championship. And that is still to this day my favorite sports memory. So just to close this off, what has been the biggest lesson you've learned through sport?
I think I mentioned earlier, you're going to get knocked down a lot. You're going to get ostracized. You're going to get criticized. You're going to be ignored. And you have to really reflect on, okay, what is being targeted in my life or in my personality? And is it something I should be doing better? Or is it something I should be correcting with the other individual? Should I take a challenge on? So I do a lot of reflection and say, okay, what's the real problem that I'm dealing with? And then I move from there.
Love it. And to close out, what are you most looking forward to this year?
It's a great question. I always look at the sports in the spring season. I think we have the fall, which is awesome. You start in the summer with the summer practices, and you watch the teams practice around the 90-degree weather, and you end, and it's about 30 degrees, and you're freezing outside with this fall sports. And then you go inside with basketball, climate controlled. It's great. But then the spring, you start out, you're cold, and you get to the spring. I think, to me, looking ahead to the spring is when I get most alive. You have softball, baseball, you have lacrosses. It's just the presence of student athletes out competing, doing what they love, and then watching the student body really get involved with the teams and the competition.
Love it. Looking forward to it as well. Mom, thanks so much for being here today. It was truly an honor, and I'm excited for people to hear a little bit more about you. I don't get to share you often, and so really appreciate it. And yeah, I'll see you in a few. But thank you, and to everyone listening, happy National Girls and Women in Sports Day to all my women in sports out there. So thank you guys. Until next time.